The restaurant was one my mother had chosen weeks in advance. Neutral colors, reliable service. Expensive enough to signal pride, not expensive enough to feel like a risk. A place where nothing unexpected was supposed to happen. They framed the dinner as a celebration, but it felt closer to a formality, something you do because milestones demand witnesses. My graduation certificate was still folded in its envelope, untouched in my bag. No one had asked to see it. That was fine. I hadn't expected them to. My sister arrived late, as usual. She kissed my mother's cheek, complained about traffic, slid into her chair without apology. The table adjusted around her presence automatically. Water glasses moved. Minutes shifted. Space was made. I noticed it the way you notice gravity, only when it's already acting on you. Conversation stayed shallow. My father talked about the economy, my mother about how exhausting the planning had been. My sister scrolled through her phone, occasionally interrupting to comment on something unrelated. When someone congratulated me, it was quick, almost procedural, like stamping a document before moving on. I didn't mind. I had learned a long time ago that my achievements safest when they stayed quiet. The money was never supposed to enter the room. It came from a trust finalized the week before, an outcome of a long, boring process involving equity I'd built, sold, and reinvested over years they never asked about. I hadn't told them because it didn't feel relevant. I was still the same person at the table. I still ordered the same meal. The revelation happened sideways. My phone buzzed. I glanced down without thinking. A message preview from my attorney, confirmation, a date, a number with too many zeros. I tilted the screen away almost immediately, but my sister was already looking. She always was. "Is that real?" she asked, not loudly. Curious, almost amused. I hesitated for half a second too long. My mother's fork paused midair. "What is it?" she asked. I could have lied. I didn't. I said something vague. "It's just a financial thing. It's handled." "How much?" my sister pressed. I told her it wasn't a conversation for dinner. My father leaned back in his chair. He didn't look at me. He looked at the table as if calculating. When my mother finally spoke, her voice had shifted. Not angry, appraising. 10 million, she said, testing the weight of it. I nodded once. The celebration ended there. Not with drama. With focus. They didn't ask how, or how long, or what it meant to me. The questions moved immediately to distribution, to fairness, to a quiet, familiar moral logic that had governed our family for as long as I could remember. My sister's life was always described in terms of fragility. She struggled more. She needed more. Things were harder for her, therefore she deserved more help. My success, by contrast, was treated as something incidental, nice, but not urgent. Something that could be redirected. My mother reached across the table and placed her hand over mine, a gesture she used when she wanted compliance, not comfort. "You don't need that much," she said gently. "And your sister, well, you know." My father nodded. It would change her life. The word deserved appeared shortly after, spoken carefully, as if it were self-evident. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I felt something old rise up, the reflex to explain, to justify, to soften the moment so no one would feel uncomfortable. The reflex to make my success smaller so it would fit. Instead, I stayed quiet. That silence unsettled them more than anger would have. My sister didn't speak. She waited. She had learned, expertly, that waiting was often enough. When I finally said something, it wasn't emotional. "I'm not transferring anything," I said. "It's not structured that way." My father frowned. "What do you mean?" I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder I'd brought without knowing why. Habit, maybe. Proof. Inside was a copy of the trust documentation. I slid it across the table. My mother skimmed. My father read more carefully. The longer he looked, the more his jaw tightened. An external authority had already spoken. The funds were protected, distributed under terms that didn't recognize parental claims or sibling hierarchies. There was no lever for them to pull. "You did this on purpose," my mother said quietly. "No," I replied. "I did it correctly." That was the moment control shifted, not dramatically, but conclusively. The kind of shift that doesn't announce itself, because it doesn't need to. My sister finally spoke. "So that's it?" she asked. "You're just keeping it?" I looked at her. Really looked. For the first time, I didn't feel responsible for the answer. "Yes," I said. The rest of the dinner passed in fragments. Accusations dressed as concern. Disappointment framed as betrayal. My parents talked about family values as if they were contracts I had violated. I paid the bill when it came, not to prove anything, just because it was there. When we stood to leave, my mother hugged me stiffly. My father said we'd talk later. My sister walked ahead without looking back. There was no dramatic cutoff that night, no declaration. Just a slow withdrawal. The messages came later. Requests, arguments, long explanations of why I was wrong. I responded less and less until I stopped entirely. Cutting them off wasn't a single act. It was a series of small refusals to engage, to justify, to re-enter the old dynamic where my worth was measured by what I surrendered. The loss surprised me with its weight. Even when a family is unfair, it is still familiar. Silence can ache, but so can staying. Months later, when I framed my diploma and hung it in my apartment, I noticed something I hadn't expected: the absence of guilt. Not relief exactly. Something steadier. I hadn't taken anything from them. I had simply stopped giving away what was never theirs.